Hello everybody, it's Michael with SteamProps LLC doing the second installment here of how to paint your Nerf gun prop. Now if you haven't checked out the first video on how to be able to get everything prepped and the tools that you need, make sure you jump over and take a look at that video as soon as possible before you begin this one. However, I'll be going through just a short quick explanation on how to be able to use black paint primer and a variety of other colors primer in order to be able to get you taken care of on the first coat, as well as working on the final coat for your clear coat. Those are going to be the two primary steps which are very critical in this whole painting process in order to be able to get down pat. And I'll do a little bit of filler in between in order to make sure I can show you what I do with my props. Now keep in mind, again, this is going to be essentially how I do it, but I strongly encourage you in order to be able to discover new ways of painting, new ways of expressing yourself through this, and new ways of making some really cool weapon props. So let's get started. Alrighty, so here's the setup that I have. Again, you can definitely do a whole bunch of different other colors and paints that I would recommend definitely checking out. But essentially what you can see is I have a bunch of different spray paints here. In another video, I will be going over how to utilize and do different techniques here with wax paints. But let's start with spray paint. It's going to be what you begin with in the process anyway, so let's start at the most logical location. This is going to be essentially a lineup of different kinds of metallic paints, hammered paints, primer and standard paint combinations, and clear coat and primer. Those are the two I'm going to be going over with you here. Looking at black on the right, gray in the middle, and white on the left. Those are going to be the three paint primers, paint primer colors that I work with in order to add different effects. Black is going to be is typically the one that I use the most of. But as you can see, I've got a different variety of colors here for different texture options, different color combinations. And again, we're looking at the type of paint that bonds to plastic. This is the paint and primer combination from Rust-Oleum. I really absolutely adore this paint line. Really dries very quickly and it does not streak a whole lot. Really ends up being something that adds a lot of different texture. That's essentially what you want to do in this step. You're adding texture to your prop. What better in order to be able to have a hammered texture if you're looking for a metal finish, or something that's really bright and interesting for the kids or for yourself. And then we also have the metallic finishes here: rose gold, gold, silver, blue with a nice quality fleck in the finish there. A lot of different kinds out there, so make sure you try them. We're gonna be looking at semi-gloss and matte for the total finished product here when you do a clear coat. That is absolutely essential. I'll go over that last. But let's start with the primer. Things you're going to want to make sure you have: proper ventilation. I've got a window in my paint shop here, essentially where most of the air flows through, along with a fan. But if you are blessed enough in order to have a location outside, outdoors, that you can do this kind of work, by all means, please do so. It gives you the most ventilation possible. And also make sure you utilize a painter's mask, one essentially going to have being with the filters on the side. That adds a lot of protection, because who in the world wants paint in their lungs? Make sure you utilize that. All right, so those kind of masks you can find at any of your hardware stores. Going to be at Ace Hardware, Lowe's, Home Depot. Those are generally about 30 bucks a piece. And again, make sure you pick up a couple extra filters for that. Safety first. However, in this video, you're not going to be hearing me wear this mask, because you guys wouldn't be able to hear me much at all. So anyway, getting on to this, make sure that you use it. By all means, I'm just doing a short tutorial here. We're going to be using the flat black primer. Again, this is going to be the base coat in which you have everything coated. You're going to have to do this in several different steps. You're going to have to do this several times, because there's a ton of nooks and crannies all over this gun and several others that orange and yellow is going to shine through. So take it in steps, take it slow, don't do it all at once, because you're going to have a lot of running paint all over it, and who wants running paint, streaking paint? So the way that you want to do this is lightly apply it in streaks until you don't see any more of the yellow or the orange. Repeat this for many, or all of the sides, rather, not many, unless you want to go for that look, that's up to you. You can see I'm doing it in short bursts. Streak, 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 streak. Basically, you want to make sure that everything gets coated properly. let it dry. Again, these paints dry very, very quickly, and you will be surprised as to how quickly you can get these kind of props done. Now, if you checked out the video last week that I did here on the how to get started, this was the prop that I had initially ground down the lettering and everything like that. You can see that I did a primer base coat started on it. This is essentially what it's going to look like, is you're going to have a lot of different voids where the black is just not covering some of that, you know, orange and white or whatever prop you're working with has on it. So keep in mind you're going to have a lot of crevices and spots on the inside. Again, you can see on the inside here you got a lot of white. If you really want an authentic prop, you're really going to want to make sure that you get as much coverage on that as possible, and don't forget the sliding mechanism here that has a lot of that paint underneath as well that needs to be applied. Now, once you have the primer coat applied, everything's coated properly. I know I'm skipping ahead on some of the middle parts here, but you have the ability to add different metallic paints like the gold here, those paint and primer combinations of the teal here that I had shown you, as well as adding all sorts of different kind of accenting options with the paint. And I'll get into some of those techniques in another video here, but you can see there's a lot of different speckling on this, stuff that you can work with here on adding some really cool texture. Again, texture is the primary, and a lot of the stuff that I work with is essentially based off of old, worn, weathered, steampunk style, cyberpunk style stuff that's been used out there, making it look authentic. Now, as you can see on the handle here especially, a lot of that black is coming through, and in the cracks and crevices where a lot of this paint wasn't able to get. As you can see, that's the point of using black or gray primarily as a primer coat, because that's going to make it look dirty in those spots. That's the goal. That's essentially what I work with, again, in worn and weathered props. So, final part, most important part, is the clear coat. Getting the clear coat going here, I've unfortunately in the past discovered that you do need a clear coat on this in order to avoid chipping, avoid scrapes, anything taken off the paint that you've painstakingly applied to your props. So with this, I like using the semi-gloss. That's my favorite. It adds a lot of shine to it. It adds a lot of gloss texture to it. Makes it look really, really cool. You can utilize the matte if you wanted to, or any other clear coats. By all means, let me know how that goes. I'd really like to discover as well. So same thing with the like you did with the primer, just light strokes. One word of warning: if you are too heavy on the clear coat, you will be in a position where you're going to start seeing some of the clear coat streaking down the gun as it's hanging up or as you're holding it. It is going to collect in places, and then when it dries, it will dry in a spider-like web kind of fashion, and it is going to be really, really susceptible to chipping. You cannot take this off, unfortunately, because it will take everything else off that you've already applied. So you go lightly on the clear coat, make sure that you utilize it properly, and add that nice, beautiful finish to your prop. Keep an eye out for the next video here on how to paint your Nerf gun prop. We're going to go into some of the wax paints, and I'm also going to go into some of the techniques and stylings of utilizing spray paints to add plenty of texture like you see on this prop here. Thank you for checking out the video. Like and subscribe. Check it out on social media. I am on Instagram and Facebook under SteamProps LLC. Really appreciate you checking it out. Take care.